So as I was thinking about this topic, I realized that I started my career writing like a man because I entered the workforce at an investment bank in an environment that I guess was designed by men and led by men. And so I therefore think the default communication style in the organization was written like a man. And I think especially when you're early on in your career, you just model what's around you. So I would just receive these emails, think, okay, that's how I email. And so that's, you match their tone, you match their vibe. And then I transitioned into working at Bumble and was met with a million exclamation marks. But I remember thinking, oh my God, this is so fun. You know, I get to use emojis, exclamation marks, kisses, felt very casual. It was just complete opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. In a way, I think you're actually lucky to have had that experience. I wanted to look up if there is actually a difference between how men and women communicate. And there are a bunch of studies that show that there is, obviously generalization, but women typically do use more indirect language and men will be more direct. And so, for example, women can use more hedging language like just or I think or perhaps. And just straight up, one of the most simple things you can do to make your emails stronger or to come across as more confident, there's a few words that you should just cut from your email vocabulary.
Yeah.
And then there's some really simple phrase swaps that you can actually do. So I'll tell you just what a couple are. I remember when someone taught me this, it was like quite early on in my career. And this amazing woman was like, you use these two words quite a lot. And if you just cut them out, you'll notice that you sound a lot stronger. So the first word is just. So you just don't need to say that I just said then. But so instead of, just checking in or just following up, just say checking in or following up. So just cut the word just. And then I think as well. So instead of saying, I think we should, just say we should. There's a couple of others that I really like. So instead of sorry for the delay, just say thanks for waiting. Instead of, if you've made a mistake on something, instead of saying sorry for missing that, say thanks for letting me know. And then the classic per my last email, which is just so passive aggressive. I think that used to be fine to say, but now just like so many people use it, it's I think it sounds really passive aggressive. So I prefer to just say like, do you have any more questions on this, or is there anything else I can help you with to like reply kind of thing, or respond to reply? But I do think the one thing that you really notice the difference between when you look at the way people who are more junior starting out in their career email versus when people are getting more senior is just the length, man. It's like when you're starting out, I think a lot of young people just write these really long emails. And I think as you get more senior, you start to figure out that you don't need all that information. I will say though, there's actually a really funny, I love this TikTok that we will put in the newsletter. It's someone who is writing, the caption is, time to write emails like a CEO who earns 40 times my salary. And he has a whole paragraph of text, which he then just deletes. And in the subject line, he writes, send the presentation. And the thing, I talk to young people about this all the time, and they're like, well, that's fine for CEOs to write that way. But if I, as a junior person, wrote that way, that wouldn't be cool. And that's true. So I think like we'll often say to young people, like, you need to write shorter emails. But then I actually have a bone to pick with execs in terms of the way they write emails. So we'll get into that a little bit later in the episode. But Michelle, I want to know, so you had this like experience of emailing like a man and then emailing like a woman.
Yeah.
Humble. How do you email now?
So I do think my style is now more of a blend.
Yeah.
And I actually do comb through my own emails and remove words like just, because I've seen the research, I've heard, the kind of discourse on this.
Yeah.
But I also weirdly like reread my emails like 3 times before I send them. And I also, once I send something, especially like a high pressure email that I've read through like 5 or 6 times before I've even pressed send, I then go into my sent folder and I read it again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, did I do that well? And I'm like, is that just me? Do you do that?
No, yeah, absolutely. I think the more senior or like the more important the person is that you're emailing, the more times you're going to read it.
Yeah.
There is that function on Gmail where you can set it so there's like a 3-second delay. Exactly.
I do that.
Yeah, because there's a psychological thing that happens in your brain. The second you send it, you're like, oh my God, I didn't put the thing in.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. But no, I think that's totally normal. But if you were doing that when you were emailing like your co-founder, then that would be kind of weird.
Yeah, exactly. No. So you have worked on 7 tips for anyone listening, 7 things that might be undermining your email or Slack style.
Yeah.
I just cannot wait for these because I've also received your emails and they're really good. Like I've started modeling you.
Not all the time. I just want to say for the record that I was never good at this stuff. So it's definitely something that you just get better at over time. But I think it's so interesting. Like we started writing more emails so we could have less meetings. And then we started using Slack more so that we could have less emails. And now we're even kind of lazier and more careless in Slack. So I do think it's really hard. I actually read the other day that there's a third of emails that we send at work that need a response go completely unchecked kind of thing. So I just think that we are completely drowning in text and we all need to help each other. So yeah, I think just before I kind of get into the 7 things, I will just say with communication, we live in our own heads, right? And it makes sense. Like we're in our bodies, we're in our heads. So much about communicating is we sit there thinking, what do I want to say to this person? What do I need to say? And we're kind of in our own heads. The best communicators get out of their own head and they think about the other person. And so the trap that we get into is we'll go to sit at our keyboard and we'll either be reacting to something that someone has said to us, or we'll be thinking, okay, like, what do I want to say? Really, you need to be thinking about the other person. What do they need to hear? What do they need to know now? And what could they maybe know later? What kind of situation are they going to be in when they receive your email or your Slack message? Just like think about them more. And I think the quicker you can learn that muscle memory of doing that all the time, it honestly takes 10 seconds before you start typing. Just spend 10 seconds thinking about the person or people that you're sending your communication to. I feel like I'm being a teacher now.
No, I
Being
love
so
this.
ranty. But I know this sounds like hectic extra work. I promise you it's not. And like if we all get better at this, it's going to make everyone's lives easier.
When did you learn to do that?
So I was really bad, and I will say I can't actually type properly. So I type with 3 fingers. I was never good at this. So I joined Google, and I think that's really where I learned. So number 1, if you are sitting there thinking, is this email too long? The answer is yes. And even if you're not sitting there thinking that, your email is still too long. So the shorter your email, the faster you're going to get a reply. And if someone can actually see, if you think about your email on a like a mobile phone screen, if someone can actually see the end of it, they're way more likely to respond to you.
This is such a good point.
Yeah. So honestly, when you're emailing, even like especially when you're emailing up, you might emailing up to sort of senior people, but really just anyone, you might be better off having a few short exchanges of like short things rather than trying to put everything into one email. But it is a trade-off, right? You can't put everything into a single email. You have to decide, would I rather someone actually read these 3 points or risk trying to send them an email with 15 points and know that they're actually just not going to read it. So that's the first thing is your email needs to be shorter. And just a couple of tips, like it does really help you can just put the text into Chat GPT or whatever your company's allowed to use and just say, reduce this by 50%. Obviously read it because it can cut out information you need. But the main trap people get stuck in is you can't write a concise email unless you're clear about what you want to say. So back to my point before, just spend 10 seconds thinking about what you actually need to say to this person before you start typing.
Yeah. Oh, I love this so much because I think when you receive an email and it looks fucking massive, you also can just take a quick glance at it, think, oh my God, that's huge, mark it as unread, and then it just gets buried in your inbox and you've mentally marked it as it's in a bit of a too hard basket. It's going to take me some time, so I'm not even going to bother until I've got that time, which might not come around for another few days.
Exactly. There is a difference between sort of internal emails that we're sending all the time and maybe you're emailing a client or someone that you don't email a lot. But if you're emailing people a lot, you should be having a conversation. Like I used to say to my team, I'm going to send really short, direct emails, but that's just because it's going to save us all time. And please do that back to me. But that's because we have, a relationship. Back to my what I said earlier, I have a bone to pick with executives. Can emails be too short? And the answer is yes, because it's like all the execs in the world got together and agreed, let's all send 3-word emails. And the thing with that is I sit there sometimes, I get emails from, execs, and I sit there for 10 minutes trying to figure out what they are actually trying to say because they've given me no context. So like your point is to send an email that is clear, and sometimes to send a clear email, you need to give the right amount of context. So it's not just about the shortest email you can possibly write.
I also think if you receive a really short, brief, sometimes cold in tone email from an exec, if you're a junior person, you can also sit there thinking, do they hate me?
Yeah.
You might not even realize that you're intimidating someone. Simply just the title that you have might intimidate someone. It's nothing about you, and you need to be conscious of that.
Yeah.
And as an exec, I don't want to sit there and scare someone just because I can't be bothered to I think as an exec, maybe sometimes they need to do the have a great weekend, So the person on the other side just feels a little bit better about dealing with them.
Michelle, I totally agree. I was getting a little bit too enthusiastic when you were talking. That's the thing, right? Back to the point I said before, thinking about the person you're emailing them. I know execs get at Google. So the average rate of emails that an executive gets a day is 700. And at Google, it was more like 1,000. I know sometimes you need to send one-word emails for sure.
Yeah.
But there is a level of think about the people you're emailing as well. And so I think sometimes approved, one word, fine. But there are times when someone's worked really hard on something and give them one extra sentence.
Yeah. Or even
And
saying,
trend.
loved this email.
Yeah.
Really appreciate the conciseness of this email. Answer. Just help them out a bit. Give them something.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We need to write a Dear Executives letter.
Yeah.
Okay. Point number 2 is, so point number 1 was your email's too long. And then point number 2 is your email's upside down. So Michelle, I want to know, have you heard of this bluff bottom line upfront
No.
method? Okay. So it's a method used in military communication. And you know how we at work, we kind of joke around oh, guys, we're not saving lives. Well, in the military, they actually are saving lives. So the way that they email and communicate is really important. And the basic principle is that we kind of think and want to communicate chronologically. So most people, it's this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And what that means when you are emailing it, you'll often say explanation, can you review this doc and then send me feedback by Friday? But what you actually want to do is completely flip it. You want to put that part right up the top and then put the context and the explaining points underneath that. So the method, it's bottom line up front, which literally means what is the bottom line for this person? Usually that is in the form of a request that you're asking, or a critical update or a recommendation you're trying to give. So ask yourself, what is the bottom line for this person? Put that up the top. I often just bold it. So I often just say hi, Michelle, bolded statement. And then you say context or this is why I've said this, and you put a couple of bullet points underneath. And then sometimes if you need even more information, you can link out. I often under my signature will often do a little appendix almost that has more explanation if they need to get into it. But if you want to know more about that, by the way, you can just ask ChatGPT to teach me more about the bottom line upfront method.
I love this. It actually is a little bit of a marketing exercise when you think about it. I was writing a job description the other day and it was a really good financial offer. And so usually I kind of put that at the bottom, but I thought, no, I'm going to pull that up to the top because I want to get more eyeballs on this. I'm going to lead with the gold. Then I'm going to make the job sound quite easy. So I pulled the deliverables up from the bottom and then I kind of got more into the detail underneath because I felt the detail might make people just tune out and then they're not seeing, oh, hey, this is actually a pretty easy job and they're going to pay really well.
Did you see exactly what you just did there?
What?
Just thinking about the audience. And then you're back to your point around, is it normal and is it okay to reread my emails? Yes. And we actually should be doing that more. Obviously, we don't want to do it to every Slack message and every email. But if we actually just once read through, we'll often find that we hide the point of the email at the bottom.
Yeah.
And you just want to bring that up to the top. I will just say again, caveat, internal, this is a lot of internal emails. If you're emailing clients, you're probably not going to write like that. But
yeah.
Michelle, I actually have a question for you.
Yeah.
You know when you'll be emailing people on Slack, are you...
Wait, emailing people on Slack?
You know when you're slacking people?
Yeah.
Will you say hello and then wait for them to reply and then ask the thing you want to ask? Or do you go straight in?
Good question. I definitely think about it because I've thought that before, but I go straight in.
There's 2 camps of people on this. I'm the same as you. I feel like if someone emails me, hey, then I have to respond, hey.
Yeah.
And then I'm just thinking what do you want from me?
Exactly.
Yeah. But I actually know some people like a little bit of a warm up before you ask them. So yeah, again, think about the other person.
So let's get into number 3.
All right. Number 3. If you are sending someone an email where you're going to ask them for something and you put, how are you at the top of that email, you're already asking them for something that they have to answer. So you're better off, instead of saying, how are you, just saying, hope you're well, or hope you had a good weekend, and then make the one thing you ask them in that email the thing you actually want. If you are emailing senior executives, you don't need to put that at all. How are you? Hope you're well. Just completely cut it. They will not think you're rude. They will thank you for respecting their time. So I think in general, people put this this goes into the debate of like warm versus directness. And I do think, you do need to have a balance of warmth versus direct. But the mistake a lot of people make is thinking that being warm is putting a bunch of small talk at the start.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying don't have any small talk. And again, think about who you're emailing. But I think people get pretty lazy with the how are you, hope you're well. And you don't actually care how someone is. Put it, if you genuinely are wondering how someone is, or you want to send them a Slack message, it's like, how are you? That's awesome. But like, don't say it to be lazy. And then so the other person will often sit there thinking like, do they want me to actually tell them how I am? Or are they just saying that? And then you have to decide yourself.
Yeah. No, I've 100% thought that when people say, how are you? I'm like, oh, do they really want to know? How much of a rundown do they want? Can you give us an example of how you can be warm and direct at the same time?
Yeah. This is like the biggest thing, right? So there is no one way, because the whole point is that you personalize it to who you're talking to. But the mistake a lot of people make is thinking being warm is putting a whole bunch of small talk at the top of your email. It's often better to get to the point of your email and then put warmth at the bottom. So at the bottom, maybe you can put some language around asking how they are, or like softening it. I also think that emojis do play a really important role. There's actually a bunch of studies where it's really hard to read tone through text. So a lot of our understanding of communication actually comes through verbal cues. So exclamation marks do have a place, but I think we use them in the wrong places, and I'll get to that right at the end. But emojis, if that's again, company culture and who you're emailing, and I think it is really important. Actually, a question, Michelle, around any tips for conveying warmth but still being direct. One of the best things you can do is to write in very human language. And the way you can catch yourself if you're not doing that is to just read your email out loud. If that's not the way you would actually say it in person, then don't write it. And so you can also just use ChatGPT and say, can you rewrite this to sound more human? But I think in general, like, warmth comes through in subtle, small ways. It's not about using a bunch of softening language. I think in general, we can be, women especially, we can be more direct than what we think. It feels uncomfortable because we're not used to emailing like that.
Yeah.
But I think once you start doing it, you'll realize that, one, recognize how you'll notice people that you respect, who you definitely think of are warm, will often send quite direct and like clear emails. So, think about, people in your company who may really respect and see how they email. So I think in general, it feels a little bit weird, but try it out. And then the way you actually build warmth is through real life channels, or sometimes through Slack. But like, build warmth through those other channels, and then you can actually be way more direct in comms. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. I love that as a tip. Focus on warmth in real life.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Number 4, not using signposting. So do you know what signposting is?
No, I actually don't.
So large blocks of text are actually really hard for our brains to process. Most people's brains find it really hard to process. So signposting is as simple as using bold headers and bullet points. And something, I know it sounds so basic, right? But people don't read emails, they scan. And that is a universal truth no matter what country, no matter what company you work for. People don't read your email from top to bottom, they scan. So actually help them with the scanning. So something I love to do, sometimes I'll sit down and if I'm emailing someone, I'll actually just think like, what are the questions that they might have? And I'll often just use their questions as my subheaders and then put bullet points under that. And, even if I'm just writing a really short email sometimes, so say it's just like a couple of sentences, sometimes I will still bold certain words and just like put it into 2 bullet points, just so it's easier for people to understand.
Yeah, I love that. It's even like, it's proven that when you're applying for jobs, recruiters will look at someone's CV for 7 seconds. So the way you structure your resume is like key achievements must be in bold. Like no one cares about the dot points of like your skills and expertise. Like show your brilliance so someone can consume it in like the blink of an eye in 7 seconds. So
it's actually
similar
like
philosophy.
Yeah. So know that people aren't really reading your email properly, but help them with that.
Yeah.
Love that. Okay. Number 5, don't use cliched corporate speak in your email. Speak like a human. So the thing that I think people underestimate sometimes is just calling it like it is. So say, for example, they'd chased me and then I hadn't responded to the chase. And so they were chasing me a third time and they actually just called it like it is. And they were like, I know I'm bugging you at this point. I'm giving it one more shot because this is really important to get, a response from you by Friday because of this reason. And I was like, thank you for just calling it like it is. You know, she didn't say per my last email. She just spoke like a human. And I was like, right on. So I think just like stop using cliche corporate speak. Just speak like a human.
Yeah. Oh my God. Have you seen the TikTok trend where they go around the office and they ask everyone what's their most hated like corporate one-liner? And it's let's circle back per my last email. I actually asked ChatGPT this and it made me lol. Per my last email, well, let's circle back on this as top of their list. They label this as corporate robot speak. Let's circle back. Just following up, per my last email, hope this email finds you well and let's take this offline.
Dead, all dead.
These ones are funny though. It's like hollow praise and cringeworthy positivity. Love that for us. And then ChatGPT goes in brackets, do we? Do we really? And then it goes, let's put a pin in that. And then ChatGPT in brackets, that pin should be permanent.
Your ChatGPT has sass.
I know, it really does. And then you're a rock star. Just say thank you and give me a raise.
I love this. We'll have to put this in the newsletter. Yeah. Okay. And then my final point is, yes, you use too many exclamation marks and they're in the wrong places. So exclamation marks are fine. I'm not saying don't use them, but we use them in the wrong places. And yes, a lot of people do use too many. So the way a lot of people use exclamation marks is to try and get someone excited about something that is not objectively exciting. So here's that spreadsheet you wanted, or inviting you to our mandatory finance training. It's like, no, that's not exciting. But yes, definitely, if something is objectively exciting, put an exclamation mark on it. I do think sometimes they can be helpful to soften the tone of an email. But again, I think emojis can be really good for that as well. What's your take on exclamation marks?
Yeah. I mean, I worked in a workplace where they were used at the end of basically every sentence. And I had to go through an unlearning, to be honest, once I left that workplace. And they actually did damage to the culture a little bit because they meant people were being praised. They felt like they were being praised when they were kind of just doing the bare minimum. So they can be a bit damaging.
It's actually really undermining. So if you're someone who's trying to be taken more seriously, you're trying to show up as more senior, you're trying to appear more confident in your emails, like just stop using exclamation marks.
Yeah, I think they've become overused in culture as well, to be honest.
Yeah. All right. That's probably it. I don't know how we're wrapping this.
No, these were amazing.
I gave everyone a lot of rules. I just want to say there are no actual rules. Like, be yourself and think about the person that you're actually emailing. If you're trying to show up as more senior and confident, these things are going to help you. So we're just going to recap them quickly with one action that you can start taking today.
Love it.
Are you ready?
Ready.
All right. Number 1, your email's too long. So instead, take 10 seconds to think about the person you're sending your email to and think, like, what do they need? And use ChatGPT to reduce the text by 50%. Number 2, your email is upside down. Write it, look for what the point of the email is, put that up the top, put it in bold. Number 3, small talk isn't warmth. So cut the lazy how are you. Yes, use emojis if that's the right vibe. Appreciate, say thank you in emails can bring out warmth, But also just have a conversation with each other around how you're going to email. If you're emailing people all the time, talk about how you're going to do it. Number 4, use signposting. So bold and bullets, even on Slack, like especially on Slack, you should be using bold and bullets. Number 5, no corporate robot speak. So read it out loud to yourself. If you wouldn't say it, then don't write it. And then number 6, be intentional about your exclamation marks. I'm not saying cut them completely, but use them in the right places.
Oh, I love these so much. They're going to help many people.